For those of you that have watched my channel and seen my previous videos, you guys know that I recently lost my job at Nissan. I started working for Chevy, and then I actually quit Chevy, and now I'm working for 4-wheel parts. You'll probably notice if you follow me on social media, you'll see a lot of stories on Instagram, Facebook, all these like installs of lift kits, bed rails, tonneau covers, all these aftermarket parts on Jeeps, trucks, SUVs, all because I've been working here at 4-wheel parts. I absolutely love it. It's definitely a game changer and it's different. I just love every bit about it because I get to do what I enjoy doing while making money. So that is win-win chicken dinner right there. So I am excited to be here and work on my truck on my days off, especially in the wintertime, because the last thing I want to do is freeze my titties off. So I just wanted to give you guys an update. So anyways, back to installing these theft preventative stuff that I bought on my truck. So this right here, this is the key for my wheels. This is good to a certain extent. This is a loaner or a spare one that I got from 4-wheel parts because mine got stolen. And I'm assuming in the future that person plans on stealing my wheels. I went ahead and bought different locking lug nuts. Well, I'll show you guys what I mean. So what I bought are these 2 packs of locking lug nuts from Megard. I also got these spiked lug nuts. Now these aren't locking, but these require a huge socket. So there is no way you can take them unless you have a socket with that much of an extension to it, because if you put a regular socket or a deep well socket onto this lug nut, it won't fit. Now you guys are probably saying, why do you have this and this? This isn't my idea. This is somebody else's idea that I thought was genius. I'll link his video in the description, but basically what we have going on is I'm going to turn 2 of these lug nuts to a locking lug nut. And what I'm gonna do is basically cut 2 of these, install 2 of them, and then use the cut piece as a cap on top of this locking lug nut. It sounds a little bit confusing, but it's really simple. At least I think it is. Basically what I'm gonna do is cut a little bit of that off. When I screw this onto here, this is gonna get tightened down. This cap is gonna go on top of that. I'm only gonna do them for 2. By doing this, I'm gonna turn these spiked lug nuts to a locking lug nut. I've looked online for locking lug nuts, for spiked lug nuts. I couldn't find anything really. In order for them to steal my wheels, what they're gonna have to have is not only a really long deep well socket, but they're also going to have this key as well. So essentially you have 2 locking mechanisms in order for them to steal your wheels. It's gonna be 2 of these locking lug nuts and 4 of these spiked lug nuts is what's gonna secure my wheels. So now you're probably thinking, well, John, that is gonna look really weird with a locking lug nut on the bottom and a spiked lug nut on top of it when you have the rest of these being 4 spiked lug nuts. It's gonna look weird because this is gonna have more length. Basically what we're gonna have to do is cut it. So we're gonna cut it so that this will go on top of this and be flush with this. Now probably what I'm gonna do first is not cut it the top of here. I'll probably go a little bit down, cut the end off, mock it up, and then go from there. So this is what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if this was gonna be able to sit in here like that. Yeah, it's gonna be resting on top of this locking lug nut. If that's the case, then that means I only need to trim down a little bit more so that it is about the same height as this other lug nut. So I need to make some measurements here, just a little bit more. All right, we'll see where that leaves us. Now that should be sitting pretty flush. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I am satisfied with that. So once I torque these down, it should be the same height. See you guys where I'm going at with this? Not to bore you guys with the same process I just did, I'm gonna go ahead and speed this up with a time lapse. So, hey DJ, spin that shit. So this was my old wheel locking lug nut. It's just a simple spline socket design. Have the key and then you put it on there and obviously loosen them that way. This key was stolen from me. Come to find out, you don't really need this key. It's a good thing I'm changing this because a buddy of mine that I work with, he told me that you can use a 19mm socket, which one of these should be able to slip it in and a 19mm socket will take it out. The minute I heard about that, I immediately ditched the spline socket design because that is just, it's crazy to me to think that I've been rolling around with these locking lug nuts and basically anyone with a 19mm can take them off. So it's probably a good thing that my key got stolen because I probably wouldn't be making this video today if they did. Now we're gonna install my new setup. Should be 10 times better because the person that's gonna have to take these wheels are gonna have to have 2 keys in order to take them out. So I ran into an issue. The problem that I'm having is that these aftermarket wheel lug nuts take a 22mm socket. Now this 22mm socket thin wall won't fit. I've tried many different creative ways, but it just gets stuck. What I need is a 21mm or lower socket to make these work. Ideally a 19mm. I'm gonna have to be creative with this. Now, if I were to do this all over again, probably what I will do is see what socket the aftermarket locking lug nuts take. And if it's a 22mm, then obviously that's not gonna work. But if you get an aftermarket locking lug nut socket that is a 19mm or somewhere like a 17mm, then that will be much easier to install. Since I already bought these, I'm probably gonna try to work with what I got. In the future, if you're wanting to do this for your vehicle, depending on the wheels that you have, you might want to do a little bit of research before purchasing the aftermarket locking lug nuts, because you might run into an issue like me where we're gonna have to do some creativity, and I think we're gonna have to bring out the welder for this one. So I'm gonna introduce you to a buddy of mine, my friend I just recently started hanging out with, and he actually happens to be the person that got me this job. Without further ado, I will introduce you to my friend Andrew, and he thought about a great idea to make these aftermarket locking lug nuts work.
We are going to weld this extension here, 1/2-inch drive, to this lug nut key. That way they are always together, especially since he can't fit this with a socket on it into his wheel. So we're gonna go ahead and tack weld that onto there. That's it.
That's all you gotta do. You just get a welder. And how much does that welder cost? Like, you know, a couple $1,000. Get a welder, some cheap lug nuts, and then you got yourself some inexpensive locking spiked lug nuts. That's all you need.
I think you're the only person ever to have locking spiked lug nuts. I think you've officially taken that title.
Oh, this is a little bit ridiculous, I'm not gonna lie. So I got all of the locking lug nuts and my custom keys made. I'm gonna get some flat black paint and then spray paint all this and then install this to the trunk. Okay, so I ran into another issue. For the rears, the wheel studs in the rear are shorter, and then on the fronts, they're a little bit longer. Now, that's a problem because this stud is actually hitting the back of this key, and I can't tighten it all the way with it being so long. So what I'm gonna have to do for the fronts, I'm gonna have to cut this little end piece off where it has no threads on at least 2 of the wheel studs. Now, once again, if I were to do this all over again, I probably would have done some research on getting some different aftermarket wheel lock keys, because we had to do some welding, and then now we're gonna have to do some cutting of the wheel studs in order to make these McGuard keys work for my wheels. Some of the wheels, the aftermarket wheels, you can actually use this and it'll be fine, but my wheels are actually designed for spline sockets. It's not really intended for a 22mm one, so we're gonna have to do an extra step to make these work. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna cut one here and then one here, kind of offset it with the 2 locking wheel lug nuts. All the cuts are made. It's looking pretty nice. I smoothed them out with a die grinder. I got one here, one here. You can see the difference in length from the side. I took about like 1 inch off, so that should give me enough clearance to tighten those locking lug nuts now. So now the only thing left we gotta do is throw on the wheels, tighten down the locking lug nuts, and then she's done. First, we'll go ahead and install the lock lug nut. It's not fighting us like it was last time. That's a good sign. So that is a wrap. It was definitely not how I intended it to go, but it's looking clean, nice. They're all level. It doesn't look like one's deeper than the other. And most of all, it's definitely secure. There's no way that these wheels are gonna get taken from me. So if you enjoy this content, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, and of course, I will see all of you in the next episode. Adios.